What is up, college sports fans, fellow members of Mountaineer Nation? This is Couz, and welcome into another edition of Couz's Corner. So come in, sit back, relax, and let me serve you up another shot of top-shelf college football content. What is on tap for today here at Couz's Corner? I've got the one and only Tony Altimore here. We are going to talk conference expansion. We're going to talk West Virginia's potential to go to the ACC at some point. Are they actually a fit? Or do they fit better somewhere else? Would they be a fit in the SEC? Or are they better off staying put where they are in the Big 12? We're going to talk about all of that here on Couz's Corner today. Before we get into that and before I bring Tony on, I ask that you please hit that red subscribe button for me. If you haven't yet, please give me the thumbs up if you like this video. Please share it out with all of your college sports loving friends. And don't forget to leave a comment below. Let me know what you think about this topic, about Tony's charts that he's going to present to us, and about where do you think West Virginia fits the best in the conference landscape. So without further ado, I'm going to bring on Tony.
Hey, Mountaineer Nation. How's it going?
Hey, what's up, Tony? How are you?
Doing great. Thanks for having me on. I'm a big fan. I actually watch your show and love it, so it's an honor to be here.
Thank you, brother. I've been wanting to get you on. I think you and I talked off camera. I wanted to get you on for a while. I just didn't know how to get in touch, so we finally were able to make that happen. And so it's an honor to have you on. I've watched the stuff you've done with the 365 guys. I know you've been on John Kurtz's show as well, I think. So happy to have you on.
Good to be here. And great to chat with West Virginia. We were chatting a little bit ago about college football is better with a strong West Virginia helping take the lead. So I went to USC actually for undergrad, so I'm excited that JT Daniels is somewhere that guy is so good. And Graham Harrell's fantastic, and I think that you guys are really going to be in a good place to win some games this year.
Awesome. Great. That's great to hear. I'm glad to hear you say that. Real quick, everybody, before I forget, Tony, let everybody know where they can find you.
Sure. So you can find me on Twitter or Instagram at TJ Altimore or Tony at AltimoreCollins.com. It's on the email's on the charts, but at TJ Altimore, it's like Baltimore with no B. I think it's on the screen right now, but you can shoot me a Twitter message or email's even better. And always glad to chat with folks. It's such a fun sport, but it's also an area that matters a lot for the university institutions. And so, one of the things that I've talked a lot about with different media outlets is trying to help us really think about the role that sports play in the institution more broadly. So we don't just get real focused on football, because that's just one part of the university. And Couz, you do a great job with folks and really helping make sure that everybody keeps that perspective.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. It means a lot coming from you, Tony, because I really respect your work. And first thing I want to talk about, and as we talk here, folks, I'm going to pull up some charts that Tony has been nice enough to share with me and with us. And I will put those on the screen and let him talk to those charts. The first topic we want to talk about, I did a video the other day about West Virginia. Would they be a fit in the ACC? Not necessarily saying I want them to go to the ACC right now, because I think the Big 12 has made some good moves. I'm happy with where we are today. But West Virginia has some challenges by being in the Big 12, which we might touch on later as far as travel and all that. But if they ever wanted to get in the ACC, there's an argument the ACC wouldn't want them. They wouldn't be a fit. And I kind of disagree with that in today's landscape. And I've used some of your charts to make my argument. So I wanted to bring you yourself on to let me know what you think and let my audience know what you think about West Virginia, and would they be a good fit in the ACC? So let me bring these up here real quick.
And just for summary for your folks, one of the things that when I've looked at the data, like West Virginia is a great fit in the Big 12. It's a perfect fit in the Big 12. It's really far from some of those other Big 12 schools. And so, as Couz and I were looking at some of the numbers, I was almost surprised in a lot of ways. West Virginia fits just fine with a lot of the ACC schools.
Yeah, cool.
As far as there's a lot. I think West Virginia is a border state, and you guys are the intersection, and always have been at the intersection of the Big Ten, the SEC, the old ACC, and the old Eastern Conference, which is how you ended up in the Big East. And there's West Virginia's kind of always fit kind of in between a lot of those conferences, and still does today.
Right.
And, looking at this chart here, Couz just pulled up, this is kind of a heat map of of 3 different areas of measurements. So the top section is sort of institution, academics, and resources, which matters a lot to presidents. Remember, a conference is about who as an organization your institution is mingling with. It's who your alumni are intermingled with at sporting events, and who you're perceived at in the marketplace, and all that. And that's why being part of an A5, or they call it Power 5, but it's really Autonomous 5 conferences, is such a big deal, because the institutions want to be mingling with that top tier of other institutions. And so the middle is market, which matters a lot to like the TV people and stuff. And then the bottom is your success in sports, and how have you done historically? Do you win? Kind of what has been your success rate in football and basketball and in other sports. And you sort of look here, and this is West Virginia compared to the rest of the ACC. And I think the first question you have to ask is, and this may sound silly, and please nobody get offended by this, but you have to look at the ACC and say, first of all, was Louisville a mistake? And if the answer is no, then there's not an argument against West Virginia. Most schools could fit, most of the Power 5 schools could fit in multiple conferences. So your question is could West Virginia fit well in the ACC? And you take a look actually at the data, and the answer is actually yes. The one knock against West Virginia is that while West Virginia is a great university that does phenomenal things for the state, West Virginia's had 24 Rhodes Scholars, which is a big number for most public schools. It's a great institution, but it does have a lower threshold of, so the bottom of West Virginia is an easier thing to get into versus the top of West Virginia's phenomenal world-class university. And so some of the rankings on, I won't call them snottier factors, but the more prestige factors that are based on things like acceptance rate and things like that, West Virginia gets dinged on. For example, the Washington Monthly ratings, which try to adjust for the snooty factor and try to add in other things which is why it's a really interesting rating system. You'll notice West Virginia jumps 100 points, just about, or 80 and 90 points or something in the rankings. So you take a look here at West Virginia, their numbers are just fine for fitting in with most of the ACC. Their SATs aren't that low. Their graduation rate is actually really good. Their sports are phenomenal. Their fan base is actually pretty big. West Virginia's fan base is and this is actually, the fan numbers are actually scraped from combining 3 separate New York Times 538 studies of national fan bases. And I scraped them all into zip codes and MSAs and counties, and we put it all together. West Virginia's actually got the 34th, and when you combine them together and weighted average them, West Virginia has the 34th biggest fan base. I'm sorry, no, that's the football rank. Their fan base is big though. What was it? I'm sorry, 30th biggest fan base, and actually the 13th best rated out of state fan base. So people watch West Virginia games, and people out of the state root for them, and they, like I said, they fit fine in the ACC. One of the things when and Couz and I talked about this a little bit, but when they added the Arizona and Arizona State to the Pac-12, Stanford and Washington got real snotty about it, actually. And the president of USC famously shamed them in front of the other presidents and said, "Don't you dare speak to me about Arizona State while you're sitting next to Washington State and Oregon State." And the point was that they're fine. And I think when we look at the ACC here, the question that Couz is asking, are they okay? The answer is yes.
Okay. I appreciate that. I appreciate you diving a little further into the details and what I'm able to provide, because I didn't, the fact about the 13th largest out-of-state fan base, that's phenomenal, because that's something that Golden Blue Dude and myself and others have been preaching to people over and over, is that West Virginia fans are spread out everywhere across the country for 2 reasons. Number one,
I think it's percentage. It's actually percentage of out of state.
I'm sorry. 13th. Okay, 13th highest percentage. Okay,
yeah, but that's great. Like, I mean, it means that there's a lot of West Virginia fans that aren't just in West Virginia.
Right. But which fits my argument that they're spread all over the country because unfortunately, a lot of people have to move out of West Virginia to find work. Historically, that's not a good thing, but it's still, if you look at a fan base perspective, and in today's climate, where streaming is becoming more prevalent, I think that means a lot, right? And then two, I wouldn't call, I guess you would say, non-traditional fans, or, maybe somebody that's not as passionate, casual fan, you could say, that watch West Virginia sports because of our history. We've had some exciting games over the year. We've had some very exciting teams and players that people like to watch.
Well, and you're a flagship school. I mean, any flagship school of a state, that you have that identity of people that are tied to the state are tied to that school. I have a lot of Michigan State friends who hate this because they call it the joke in Michigan. They'll sometimes call it the Walmart Wolverines. People that are devout like Michigan fans that have nothing to do with the university. And so but those are important fans. And the thing is with due respect to Marshall, who they'll probably kill me in the comments, but like if you're sort of from West Virginia, you have family from West Virginia, you're probably a West Virginia fan. And it helps that they've had some down years lately, but like the history of West Virginia football, they've always been a power.
So that's the ACC argument. But what I also find interesting, Tony, is when I look at these other charts, there was a time when West Virginia was pretty close to getting the SEC, I believe, back before they took Missouri and A&M. West Virginia was one of the four schools they were picking from to expand. West Virginia, unfortunately, got left out of that. But if you look at the SEC, let me find the slide here. There it is. SEC and West Virginia, how do they compare? I find it pretty interesting. I think they fit well there. Can you talk to this slide a little bit for us?
Yeah, so West Virginia, the SEC will probably crucify me for this. I won't be able to log into Twitter. West Virginia is a far better academic school than a lot of the stuff in the SEC. Now, the SEC has very sneakily in their expansion, the SEC has been adding phenomenal world-class universities. That whole left part, and by the way, for anybody who's looking at these, they're not good or bad. They're all compared to each other. Right. So when you look at the Ivy League in this, by the way, guys, we have one of these of the Ivy League where like Harvard is green and Dartmouth is red. Yeah, Dartmouth is just fine. So this is just compared to each other. That's what this is showing. Green is not good and red is not bad. This is just relative to each other. The MAC is the same way. It's really funny if you look at the MAC and the Ivy League next to each other, because they both are like rapid green to red. But they're different institutions overall. So these are just comparing to each other to sort of see where you fit. And what you find with conferences on these charts is that if somebody's all green and somebody's all red, they tend to not really fit very well together. Sort of Florida and Mississippi State when you look right here. But like when you make the arguments about West Virginia institutionally, market-wise, and athletically, which are the three things that matter, West Virginia is just fine compared to the rest of the SEC. Right. And, the thing about the SEC is, right now, they're sort of they've been run so well that everybody, and they're, also things are sort of cyclical and they're on the highest of highs right now. So, they're certainly everybody wants to join the SEC, but West Virginia would fit in just fine with the SEC in terms of any metrics. Right. And the truth is, by the way, it's the secret to the SEC. You're not all Alabama and Georgia. Sorry, guys. And in fact, the U.S. News ranking aside, like I think West Virginia is a lot better school than Alabama. West Virginia does way more research than Alabama. They have way better academic programs in a lot of areas than Alabama. Alabama spends I think I did an index actually of the importance of football profits to your university, like as part of the budget. And West Virginia is better than most of the SEC in that regard. Like it's President Gee knows this, but West Virginia is like a better run university than most of the SEC.
Yeah, thank you for that. I obviously, I'm sure every Mountaineer fan would probably love to be in the SEC. I've heard the argument.
Classically, it's a phenomenally well-run league.
Right. Well, I mean, and anymore, you know, the kind of money they're bringing in would be huge for an institution like West Virginia. And I've heard people say that there's no way we could compete in the SEC. I don't know that I agree with that.
I don't either.
I think we could compete with Vanderbilt, Mississippi State, Ole Miss, maybe even Texas A&M if they don't start winning with these high recruits they have.
And Missouri and South Carolina.
Yes, and absolutely.
You'd have smacked Florida around last year.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's what I'm saying. It's I like you said, not everybody in the SEC is Alabama and Georgia. Now, would West Virginia win the SEC? Probably not. At least, especially not early on.
Not right now.
But you know, but once we start recruiting at an SEC level, maybe we could. You know, you never know.
West Virginia's played for a lot of – the thing about West Virginia people don't realize – like West Virginia hasn't won a bunch of national championships, but they've played for a bunch of them.
Mm-hmm.
Like they've been
at least been in the conversation. Right.
Yeah. And West Virginia, I mean, the other thing, oh, my God, if West Virginia was in the SEC, they would drive people nuts because they would do what Texas A&M keeps doing, where they keep beating, the undefeated high-ranked teams. That West Virginia would do that all the time.
Mm-hmm.
The big thing we laugh at among USC fans is, you know, if you ever really want to scare a USC fan, whisper to them very quietly, Corvallis, it's Friday night and raining. And they'll be like, because I think they've had 3 number 1 USC teams or whatever lose in Corvallis on a rainy Friday night. West Virginia teams would go up to Mountaineer Field and lose. Like number 1 teams, it would be a nightmare. Awesome for West Virginia fans, but I mean the thing is, like I said, they're not in contention for the SEC, but like as far as fitting in, like if the SEC needed to expand, they would be a fine candidate.
See, I don't think we need to spend a whole lot of time on where they would fit into the Big Ten or the Pac-12. West Virginia was really, in my opinion, not really a fit for either of those conferences.
No, and I think they're closer to London than Seattle.
Probably so. Yep. So, I mean, here's your Pac-12 chart. I mean, you see all the red and pink that West Virginia brings up on the Pac-12 chart compared to other Pac-12 schools.
But at the same time, remember, you know, I mean, that's the thing about, the Pac-12 has always had a lot of disparity within it.
Mm-hmm.
And particularly the 2 Oregon and the 2 ag schools, I mean, West Virginia is completely on par with. In fact, Oregon is a great analogy of West Virginia, where you have a flagship state university that, you know, was not always very selective, but I mean, great programs. I mean, Oregon's an AAU school. It's a phenomenal university, but like more of a flexible enrollment. Like UCLA is the most applied to school in the country. Berkeley is probably the single greatest public institution of higher learning ever created. I hate their teams. I hate them with a passion, but I would hire their graduates in a moment.
Right.
I wouldn't be able to talk to them on Fridays during football season, but I would hire them in a minute because they're amazing. Right. Amazing people, but same with UCLA. I love UCLA actually in a rival way, but they, those are just very different institutions from the ag schools. But here's the thing: the Pac-12 learned this the hard way when they had a little coup in the 50s and they expelled Oregon and Oregon State from the new conference, and then they realized that actually they kind of needed them, and they were pretty good to have in the conference,
right?
And they had to fire all the administrators who were running them at the time from the coup era. But once that was solved, they expanded and added them all back in 1962 and 1964. So, you know, people that think about like, oh, well, you know, the Pac-12 school, they already did that. A lot of the sort of crazy conspiracy theories you hear, it's like, guys, read the books on the 1950s. We literally already did that. Right. And you compare West Virginia, you know, to those kind of schools. I mean, again, they're not going to make that kind of travel, but they fit in just fine.
Right. Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, like you said, I said they didn't fit. They do. I was looking more geographically because the Big 12 travel is brutal enough. We don't need to be traveling to Seattle or Dallas.
Exactly. Although I'll tell you, it's easier to get back from Corvallis than it is to get back from Manhattan, Kansas.
Oh yeah.
Sorry, John. John Kurtz is gonna do voodoo doll things to me for that.
But. Yeah, but and then just real quick, we don't want to expand on this too much, but let's look at real quick at the Big Ten versus West Virginia. I think I passed it there.
Yeah, the Big Ten's a whole nother category, but the Big Ten does something.
Yeah, there it is.
I'll tell you that I think that what they really should do in the Big 12, and it would benefit West Virginia in a huge way, and that is the Big Ten Academic Alliance. The Big Ten in Chicago, who quit football in 1939, 37. Oh my God, I'm forgetting. I should know. I think it may have been 39. Left the Big Ten, but stayed in their academic alliance, and to this day is still in there. The Big Ten integrates all of their university purchasing, and I mean, sports is big money in the millions. This is in the billions. They integrate a lot of their research elements. They integrate their cybersecurity, their IT, all of their libraries and information resources in the Big Ten are integrated together. The training of their professors. So if you're going to be like the professor who's now the head of the history department at Ohio State, you go to leadership training at the Big Ten headquarters, along with the guy who's going to be the new head of the history department at Wisconsin and the guy from Iowa. And they do all this stuff as training together. They hire each other's PhDs. They network their PhDs together to help them get professorships and teaching jobs and do their doctoral research. Again, the Big Ten on sports is great in the millions, but the Big Ten on academics is together in the billions.
Right.
And that's why the Big Ten has been so successful. It's not because they're great at football. It's because they're all about the institutions coming together. And it's something, and this is why the Big Ten is such a phenomenal conference. And the universities in them are phenomenal. That didn't happen in the SEC. That's why Mississippi is not as good a school as Indiana. Because the Big Ten works together in that way. And I'll tell you, now that the Big 12 is really solidifying itself together, I think it's a huge area of opportunity that they could really help the schools. And that would be so good for West Virginia.
Yeah. Didn't you mention one time and correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't you mention one time that a lot of these schools even share professors?
Exactly. That's what they're doing. They're training each other's professors together. Right. They're hiring each other's graduates as professors. I mean, they do for example, they do for women in areas like STEM areas where there aren't as many female professors. Mm-hmm. They're partnering together to help build that and hire each other and do things like that. And that's stuff. I hate to say this. These are not professional sports institutions. These are universities. Right. UCLA, I think sports are 5% of their budget. Academics are a big percent. Research is a huge percent. West Virginia, research is more important to West Virginia than football. Yeah. And so, what you can do to make, West Virginia's research better by partnering together with the other institutions. I mean, what West Virginia is there, the great thing, what the university or West Virginia University has really had its mission to help the state grow and succeed. And to that end, what you can do to mingle with the other great universities around the country, I think would help a lot. And it's something that the Big 12 has not taken advantage of yet. I really think that they should.
Right. A great point. And that was something I was not aware of. So I appreciate you bringing that to light, because I think as fans, we get in a habit of looking at everything from through a football lens or a sports lens. And we fail to realize these are universities. Their main primary goal is to educate people. And university presidents are making decisions most of the time.
Yep.
Especially when it comes to conference expansion stuff.
Hugely.
The AD has a say, but at the end of the day, it's the chancellors, the boards, and the presidents making decisions.
Well, and remember too that a lot of the biggest expansion things in history were done without the ADs.
Very true.
Yeah, I mean, when they added Penn State was added in secret. The ADs were not told. When the Pac, because of the bad feelings of the 50s, when the Pac was five, called the Big Five at the time, were adding Oregon State, Washington State. Those meetings were in secret. The presidents did not tell the ADs that they were even having the meetings. Wow. And all of a sudden, word came out of San Francisco that the presidents had flown in and readmitted the Oregon schools, and UCLA hit the roof because they were so mad about it. Right. But these decisions are made by presidents, and they're about institutions, and they're also about the broader strategy of the institution. And one of the issues that the Big 12 has had, and Texas was a nightmare to the Big 12. And I think the Big 12 is going to be so much more healthy not having Texas there as the 800-pound gorilla. And also some of the Big 12 schools, because they were so mad at Texas, they didn't really feel invested. In order to do what the Big 10 does, you're invested for the long term. Like anybody who ever tells you that somebody's going to leave the Big 10 knows nothing. Because like the reason that Maryland and Rutgers and Penn State, they clamor to get in the Big 10 is because, again, they want to be part of that, like together as an organization in the billions, and the sports on the millions is a wonderful side benefit.
Yeah. So for all you people out there who have been commenting under my videos that ACC needs to add Penn State, not a chance, right?
Never. But I will say also, and there's some Big 12 implications in this as well. One of the things that the Big 10 did in adding Maryland and Rutgers was they were worried that Penn State would be lonely being so far from everyone. And that they thought going east, it was mostly about TV dollars. And also, by the way, it's TV dollars at great universities that they want to have a part of this. Like, again, when you're in the Big 10, you're integrated into their library network. So they only want schools that they want integrated into their library network and teaching their own professors and that they're going to hire professors from.
Right.
And that's why, Rutgers is pretty lousy at football and pretty much always has been. But Rutgers is a great school.
Right.
Same with Maryland.
And the fact that they're in New York probably didn't hurt either.
Oh, real good. Exactly. And Maryland and DC. And right. Maryland, with all that, the research that Maryland does for the Department of Defense and the NSA and stuff, the Big 10 really wanted its hand in that. Right.
So it's more than just TV markets.
Exactly. It's all of the above. And that's why, when they look to expand and they want all of that stuff. And you see that with the SEC, like going to Texas. Why do you want Texas? Well, Texas is a phenomenal, great, big market, big football team, all that. Mm-hmm. Also a phenomenal university. It elevates the level. You want to hang out with those people. The Arizona schools, the reason that they are not interested in the Big 12 is because their alumni are all in California.
Yeah.
Huge, massive amounts of alumni of the Arizona schools are in California. They want to play their games and all their sports in California. Their alumni are not based in Ames and Kansas City and Cincinnati. Their alumni are in LA and San Diego and San Francisco.
Makes sense. Now, this chart that I'm going to pull up next really is intriguing. This is the Big 12. This is what West Virginia looks like compared to the other Big 12 schools. And you can see West Virginia has less red in their column than any other school. Yeah, and actually, because I should have redone this because I just did these quickly when I put them together. Mm-hmm. West Virginia really should probably be a couple more to the left. Again, it's not there's no like set order of these, but right. You're right. West Virginia is a perfect Big 12 school. The downside is it's just really, really, really far from the other Big 12 schools. Yeah. Like if West Virginia was in Memphis, you would say it's absolutely the most perfect school in the world for the Big 12. Like it fits in the Big 12. There's another data point that I had comparing. I got really annoyed at the SEC commercials that make me vomit, where they say like, "Oh, it just means more." Well, so I made an index of football profitability as a percentage of your actual budget, your football operating margin, like how much of your school's budget comes from the football operating margin, and index it to SEC equals 100. And West Virginia is at 88. Alabama is at like 140. Oklahoma is at 160. West Virginia is at 88, right in line with Texas Tech, right in line with Kansas State, right in line with all the Big 12 schools. They would be right in line with Kansas if they made any money off football. Kansas's number is low, but it's low because they don't make much money off football. Right.
But yeah, West Virginia is a perfect fit for the Big 12. And so like if West Virginia were to never go to the ACC and were to always just stay in the Big 12, again, we can talk about travel differently, but like it's a great fit. It's a great conference. And I'll tell you, I think with the new schools coming in, it's a more stable conference than the ACC possibly.
Yeah, I agree. And I've had people when I do a video about West Virginia potentially going to the ACC, I get all these people, why are you so in love with the ACC and why do you want to leave? And I didn't say I did. I'm just trying to make a point that we are a more attractive program and more attractive institution than what people make us out to be. That's the point I'm trying to make.
And the thing is you're an institution that would fit in well in a lot of different places.
Right. The biggest challenge we've got in the Big 12 office. I mean, you look at this, academics were a fit. We're a fit from as far as market size. We're a fit as far as athletics. And I'm looking forward to seeing us play against these other Big 12 teams, honestly, the BYU, Cincinnati's.
And by the way, for anybody that's looking in the comments, some of the numbers have issues like, for example, they're on like constant dollars. They're in like $2014 or $2018. So when you look at it and you say like, our research is more than that, it's like it's a different calculation because it's probably like normalizing it to adjust for inflation over like comparing the 50 years of data. So
right.
Just the folks in the comments before you.
Oh yeah, well I appreciate that but I mean we know that these numbers are probably not 100% accurate to today's numbers. I mean
exactly. I think they're 2 years old. But yeah, they are normalized. I think to 2014 or 2018 inflation. So they're different.
But directionally they should be pretty dang accurate.
Comparatively they're exact.
Yeah.
And directionally they're pretty close.
And that's all we're looking at is comparatively, because I just want to prove to people that West Virginia, while the Big 12 is a great conference, we're a great fit, and if West Virginia ends up staying in the Big 12 as a fan, I'm content with that. As long as the Big 12 remains stable, remains a Power 5 conference, I'm perfectly fine staying where we are.